Madam Speaker, to ask Dr. the Honourable Minister of Health and Quality of Life whether, in the light of the recent assessment and findings of the 41st Expert Committee on Drug Dependence of the World Health Organization, he will state if consideration will now be given for A, cannabidiol to be removed from the purview of the Dangerous Drugs Act, and B, medicines containing cannabis and cannabis resin to be authorized for use in Mauritius on prescription by medical practitioners.
Madam Speaker, cannabis is defined as a flowering top or separated resin of the Cannabis sativa plant. Cannabis contains about 400 chemicals, including 121 reported phytocannabinoids, with the most prominent of these compounds being delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, that is THC, and cannabidiol. However, tetrahydrocannabinol is a principal intoxicant constituent of cannabis. It is to be noted that cannabidiol is a non-intoxicating compound of cannabis compared to tetrahydrocannabinol, which gives a euphoric feeling when consumed. Early this year, the WHO recommendation was delivered to the United Nations as part of its report of the 41st Expert Committee on Drug Dependence, Cannabis and Cannabis-related Substances. Furthermore, the report cited the potential of cannabis to cause adverse side effects, such as impairment of motor control and cognitive function. These effects were attributed to the presence of delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, that is THC, in cannabis and cannabis-derived products. Most of the adverse effects associated with cannabis result from chronic use. Regular cannabis use is associated with increased risk of mental health disorders such as anxiety, depression, and psychotic illness. Madam Speaker, cannabis and cannabis resin are currently under Schedule 1 of the Dangerous Drug Act 2000. Cannabidiol is a component of cannabis. On January 24th, 2019, the WHO released the final outcome of its scientific assessment of cannabis sativa-based products and substances, following the review undertaken by the WHO Expert Committee on Drug Dependence, 39th, 40th, and 41st sitting. The final adoption of these recommendations by the UN Commission on Narcotics Drugs is expected for March 2020 during the 63rd session. With regard to Part A and Part B of the question, my ministry is presently not considering the removal of cannabis and cannabis resin from the Dangerous Drug Act 2000 until a further study is made on the implication of the drug and its income.
Point of order. The question doesn't relate to removing of cannabis and cannabis resin from the Dangerous Drug Act. It relates to cannabidiol being removed from the Dangerous Drug Act. Otherwise, it will create confusion. The question is not as I asked.
Madam Speaker, sorry.
Yes. No, I said that the question is in two parts. Yes. In the first part, you asked about cannabidiol to be removed from the purview of the Dangerous Drugs Act, and the second one relates to cannabis and cannabis resin. Now, the honourable member is a medical practitioner, and he knows better whether those two are related or not.
I think you would agree, Madam Speaker. We are talking about both, in both question A and question B, we are talking about cannabidiol, okay, and part B about cannabis and cannabis, okay, resin. That's what I'm talking about. They're both. Yeah. Alors, so I'll just start again if you don't mind. With regards to part A and B of the question, my ministry is presently not considering the removal of cannabis and cannabis resin from the Dangerous Drug Act 2000 until a further study is made on the implication of the drug and its components. A policy decision will be taken in light of the recommendation, taking into consideration the specificity of a country. My ministry will set up a high-level committee after the adoption of the UN Commission on Narcotics in March 2020 to consider recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We are talking about use of cannabidiol for medical purposes. This has been recommended by the expert committee. The expert committee on drug dependence recommends strongly, clearly, that cannabidiol no longer be treated as a dangerous drug. Can I ask the Honourable Minister, what is now the official position of Mauritius, pending the meeting of March? What is the official position of Mauritius concerning cannabidiol?
As I've just mentioned, we are going to set up, we are waiting for 2020 in March. Once the United Nations decide in what direction we are going to go, and then I'm going to set up a committee to study in which direction we are going to do, what we are going to do regarding cannabidiol.
Madam Speaker, the expert committee on drug dependence of the WHO consists of world-renowned experts, 11 of them. They are medical practitioners, all of them, are pharmacists. They have recommended clearly that cannabidiol should be removed. Now it's going to be the ministerial committee in March, which will decide. 53 countries, politicians will decide. So I'm asking the government here in Mauritius to tell me what is the political position of Mauritius regarding the expert decision, the expert recommendation.
I've just answered, Madam Speaker. We have to wait. I'm going to wait for the United Nations, and then I'm going to set up a committee not by politicians, by experts in the field to decide in which direction to go.
Madam Speaker, the Honourable Minister, I'm sure is aware that the Food and Drug Administration, a hugely respected organization in America, have now authorized Epidiolex, approved Epidiolex, to be used in epilepsy cases, where thousands of children, in Mauritius also, 15,000 people suffer from epilepsy. Now, FDA in USA has authorized a cannabidiol in Epidiolex to be used. Does that not influence the government here that the same should be done?
No. Again, I agree. FBC. Now, what I was going to say is that, okay, as far as treatment of epilepsy is concerned, the treatment of epilepsy is not for all type of epilepsy. As you mentioned, 15,000 people has epilepsy in Mauritius. Cannabidiol is not indicated for these 15,000 people. It is indicated in one particular type of epilepsy, the Gastrolenox type of epilepsy. In one type, very rare, but in only one type of epilepsy. And for the time being, if we have, it's a new drug. It's a new drug. Now, if you have old drug which has been used all this time, we are still using that. This drug would be a second-line drug. It's not, cannabidiol is not a first-line drug. It's going to be a second-line or even a third-line drug of this type of epilepsy. That's what I've said. We are treating this kind of patient. We are treating this kind of patient with a first-line drug, and if the recommendation come later, we'll go in the direction.
Speaker, whether it is one child or 15,000 children, it's the same thing. Now, FDA in the USA has approved that drug. That is recognized worldwide now. 47 countries, Madam Speaker, have approved the use of cannabis and cannabidiol for medical purposes. Why is the government dragging its feet and not considering the thousands of people who are suffering in Mauritius at the moment?
Just repeated. If we don't have thousands of people who are suffering, so who needs this drug in Mauritius? I've just repeated it again. I'm going to repeat it. We don't have thousands of people who need this drug in Mauritius. And now let me tell you, we may have 47, but we have a lot of countries which has not started the use of cannabidiol as well. So that's what we are doing.
All the major countries, all the leading countries, including 30 states in America, UK and France, are doing so. Madam Speaker, I'd like to ask the Minister whether, as a doctor, he is aware also that cannabidiol is a treatment for people suffering from nausea and vomiting and all sorts of ill effects, side effects of chemotherapy. And there are thousands of people in Mauritius following chemotherapy treatment. Why isn't this allowed for these people?
Again, we have been using a lot of medicine to treat nausea and vomiting for people who are getting chemotherapy. We have been using it for a long time at the cancer center. And they're working. If tomorrow it is approved, naturally I'm going to use it. But again, I'm waiting for the expert group to decide on that. If I decide, you will tell me I'm deciding personally. I'd better wait for the expert group to decide, and then I'm going to do it.
Speaker, the expert group has already given this. I will table the copy, has already given. It is the ministerial group that hasn't yet. The expert group has already, and you quoted yourself at the beginning of the year, that expert group on drug dependence has already given its okay for that, its recommendation. This is why the whole question is that. There's already a recommendation. I will table it if you like. There's already a recommendation, and a letter was sent on January 2019 to all countries. And with the recommendation, it is here, the recommendation.
It's a ministerial committee, but it has not been approved by the WHO as such, number one, and we are waiting for the UN to adopt it, and then we're going to study it, and if needs be, we are going to do it in Mauritius. I don't see that leader of the opposition is trying to pretend. Sorry, the word is not pretend, but, sorry, excuse me. It's not pretend, but trying to imply that we are not treating this patient. This is wrong. This is not right. We are giving the patient the treatment. There are alternate treatment. We are giving the treatment. So to pretend, to imply that we are not treating the patient, I think that's wrong.
Speaker, it's time for me to come up with a letter here from a well-known athlete here, Mr. Roman. He has given me the permission to use his name. He suffers from cancer. He's a high-level athlete, ex-high-level athlete, suffers from cancer. He doesn't have a lot of money. He has to travel periodically to South Africa to get decent treatment for his cancer. Because there is also evidence, as is practiced in South Africa, that cannabis this time, not cannabidiol, cannabis and cannabis resin, etc., helps to treat and cure even cancer. Now, what are you going to say to Mr. Raman? That he should wait in a year's time and maybe even die before then?
Again, Madam Speaker, I would like to say that now you just quoted FDA just now. FDA does not recommend the use of cannabis in the treatment of cancer.
He's mixing everything. FDA recommends, yet he doesn't recommend. FDA doesn't recommend, he doesn't recommend at the same time. Don't run away from the question. The question is 47 countries. 47 countries. You have a chance in a minute, Minister. Keep cool. 47 countries in the world, leading countries, Australia, UK, America, everywhere, are authorizing medical cannabis, in part also for cancer treatment. This is the question. And there are people here, thousands of people suffering from chemotherapy treatment, ill effects, and suffering from cancer. And there is evidence that cannabis and cannabis resin can be used under medical supervision through prescription by a doctor to cure or to treat their illness. This is the question. Why isn't it authorized in Mauritius?
Madam Speaker, I think the leader of the opposition is getting confused about cannabidiol and cannabis. He just said about cannabidiol was recommended by FDA earlier. I agreed and said we are going to study it and we are going to, if needs be, we are going to. Cannabidiol, as far as I will repeat myself, cannabis is not recommended as a treatment for cancer by the FDA. I repeat myself.
I didn't say that.
You said it.
I said that you are using FDA as an excuse. When it says no, you say no. When it says yes, you also say no. That is what I said. And you should understand a question when it comes to you. Madam Speaker, I'm going to ask this question. We agree that cocaine is a bad drug if abused. We agree that opium is a bad drug if abused. But both of these are authorized in Mauritius for medical use in medicine. Why? Cocaine and opium, for me, I'm a layman, sounds worse than cannabis. can be authorized for medical use. 47 countries in the world, leading countries, authorize cannabis for medical use. And in Mauritius, we are acting like we are back in the 1900s and refusing to see the truth and the medical evidence where it is.
I've not said we are refusing, Madam Speaker. I said, okay, WHO has recommended the expert committee, and we are waiting. Once it is approved by the United Nations, we are going to see to it. We are going to have a group which is going to meet, and then if needs be, we are going to apply it. If we need be, we are going to give the permission for it to be prescribed in Mauritius. But we can't rush. This is just a recommendation. Please, this is just a recommendation. So we should not get confused about it.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to hear what the Minister has to say to the thousands of people suffering from epilepsy, and we're talking about whatever, and for persons suffering from cancer, who have, according to him, to wait a year and a half, 2 years before it gets authorized in Mauritius. What have you got to say to them? Be patient, wait, die in the meantime? What are you going to say?
I think, Madam Speaker, I think the leader of the opposition is quite confused about the whole issue. He's quite confused about the whole issue. I've repeated myself. I've just answered it. I'm repeating it again. Cannabidiol, okay, it has been shown to be, it can be used in some diseases. It can be used in some diseases. So, I've said it can be used, and I'm waiting for it to be confirmed, and I'm going to. But I repeat it again from what you have said. Cannabis is not recommended by the FDA. In difference between cannabidiol and cannabis, which the leader of the opposition is not making the difference.
I understand this. I understood this before I came to this room. It's the Minister who is pretending not to understand the question. I'm going to give you the list of countries, not FDA, which are approving. You think you know more than them? You know more than Australia, UK, USA, New Zealand, Canada, Portugal, South Africa, Austria, Germany. These people have had a thought for people suffering from cancer and other diseases, and have authorized cannabis and cannabis resin for medical use. I'm saying to the Minister that these countries, 47 countries, have shown the way and have jumped the gun, have not waited for FDA approval, have not waited for WHO approval, and have given priority to the people suffering from illnesses in their country. This is the question. Don't wait for FDA, don't wait for WHO, go with the 47 leading countries in the world who have already authorized cannabis and cannabis resin for use. Is that question clear?
Madam Speaker, I'm surprised to hear the honorable leader of the opposition. Just now he cites the FDA. FDA is doing this. Just now you just now you told me FDA said we have to use cannabidiol. When I tell you now, FDA, the FDA does not recommend the use of cannabis in treatment of cancer. WHO does not recommend the use of cannabis in the treatment of cancer. Why should I go the country? Why should I follow the country when the FDA, you just mentioned FDA. You just mentioned the FDA. I've told you FDA does not recommend it. You just mentioned about WHO. WHO does not recommend the use of cannabis in treatment of cancer. Now you tell me to follow 47 countries.
Speaker, we need to have elections soon to get rid of all these people from government. I can't understand it. Simple question and an answering. I'll put it simply for the Minister. He qualified in the UK? Yes? You qualified in the UK. The United Kingdom, which includes Scotland, authorizes the use of medical cannabis. Do you understand? So had you qualified now, there you would have been treating people with medical cannabis. This is the question. UK, why don't we follow? Forget all the other 46 countries. Why don't we follow the lead from the leading countries of this world? Why are we always in the last lot following the countries who are least developed and least forward-looking in terms of medicine?
I'm surprised that the leader of the opposition considers the World Health Organization the least country. I'm surprised to hear that. You know, I mean, our drug therapeutic, we follow the WHO recommendation in Mauritius. We follow the WHO recommendation. Even France, for that matter, I've been told, has set up a committee. Has set up a committee. They don't use it. Has set up a committee to see whether you're going to use it on a medicinal. I'm talking about cannabidiol, not cannabis again.
Madam Speaker, Section 7 of the Dangerous Drugs Act allows the minister to give permission for research. I'm sure he's aware of it. I'd like to ask the minister, we are now a research and innovation center apparently in Mauritius. How many permits have you given as minister for research into cannabis and cannabidiol in Mauritius?
I've not had any, as far as I remember, but as far as I know, I have not received any requests for the research in cannabidiol. So we have not sent anything.
So now that you know that 47 countries have authorized, France is doing research, are you now going? This is a serious question. You're not suffering from epilepsy, Minister. Maybe you won't care, but many thousands of people are. Now, let me tell you now. Don't take it as a joke. 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 The minister is laughing.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition has the floor. Allow him to ask his question.
Don't laugh at it. Minister Siratambu, don't laugh at it. Madam Speaker, shame on you. Madam Speaker, I'm going to ask the Honourable Minister of Health. I'm going to ask the Honourable Minister of Health whether now that there's 100 million or more in the research fund, whether he will not now, today, this week, ask the University of Mauritius, howsoever it is, to start doing research in Mauritius on the cannabis plant that we have, on the effects of cannabis in Mauritius, and whether this should not be a priority of government given the number of people who are sick in this country.
Madam Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition again is trying to be emotional about the issue, trying to raise the emotion of the population outside. There are, like he was saying, there are thousands of people who are suffering from epilepsy and are not getting the treatment. Again, this is a lie. Maybe it's not true, I should say it. It's not true. There are not thousands of people in Mauritius who need that medication. I've said again, it's a rare form of epilepsy, and we have the first-line treatment we are using. Now, as far as research country, a lot of countries are doing it. Do you think Mauritius is such a big country to do large-scale research? No. No. I mean, let's be fair. Is Mauritius is such a big country to do research like that? Or should I depend? Or should I depend on the FDAs? Or should I depend on FDAs? Which has a bigger population and with large-scale research.
FDA, yes. Yes, I will. FDA has given approval for cannabidiol for epilepsy. So can we take it that today, this afternoon, you will do necessary to follow FDA, at least in that one? Madam Speaker, I'm going to ask the Honourable Minister. This is an important question. I'm happy people have stopped laughing now. It's an important question. We are turning sick people into criminals. Sick people consider it as a human right to get the medicine that they need. And with the prohibition that government is putting on these drugs, which 50 countries have taken out of their legislation, this is turning sick people into criminals. So my plea to the government here is you want to follow FDA today and take authorized Epidiolex. You want to wait for WHO in a year's time, it's too late. So I'm going to ask the Honourable Minister whether he will not do the necessary this afternoon to at least do the minimum to stop turning sick people into criminals in this country by using medicine that they're not authorized to use.
Madam Speaker, there we go again. He's the Leader of the Opposition trying to be emotional, to say that the government doesn't care about the patient, and he's the only one who cares about the patient. No, we ne pas sauver rien là. Listen, you've asked your question. Wait, listen, you've asked your question. Listen, please. You know what I mean? When I've said we are going to set up a committee, once I get it in 2020, I'm going to I'm going to set up the committee and we are going to give that if we have, the committee decide we have to give it.
Honorable Adrien Duval.
Toi qui devais faire ça.
Give his reply.
Because that's when the committee is going to meet in March 2020, if you don't know. If you don't know, that's when the committee is going to meet in March 2020.
Yes, Honorable Salvo.
Thanks, Mrs. Speaker, for giving me the floor. We on this side of the House, we don't laugh about patients because medical cannabis.
Don't make statements. We don't have much time.
Yes, I'm putting my question.
Ask the question.
Yes, Madam Speaker, I'm putting my question. L'honorable ministre assumera-t-il la responsabilité en cas de mort d'un des touristes auxquels la police... Qui a eu?
Honorable Salvo, ask your question.
Talking about patients. We are talking about something which concerns sick people. And you
Honorable Salvo, this is the third time I'm calling you to attention. I have given you the floor. You ask your question. You don't have to engage in a dialogue with any of the members on the other side.
L'honorable ministre assurera-t-il la responsabilité en cas de mort d'un des touristes auxquels la police arrache à l'aéroport leurs médicaments à base de cannabis prescrits aux États-Unis, prescrits au Canada, en Australie, en Hollande ou par le NHS en Angleterre, où une telle saisie a failli causer la mort d'un enfant de 13 ans, Billy Caldwell. Et le Home Office a dû s'excuser et lui rendre...
Honorable Salvo, please resume your seat. Question time is not a pretext for debate. Right? You ask your question, the Honorable Minister will reply.
Madam Speaker, encore peut faire la politique le malheur du monde. I've read about it. Encore pareil. I've read about it, about the case. It was on BBC a few days ago last week. I know the problem, but I've said it. I've said it. This is one type of epilepsy. There are different types of medicine. If we can treat the child with a different type of medicine, we'll do it.
Honorable Shakil Manai, please be brief.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm just limiting myself to the issue of cannabidiol. And there is, last year, there was a program which was aired.
Brief, please.
Very brief.
With your question, yes.
Aired about a young lady who was suffering from myélite traverse, maladie de Raynaud and lupus, and who has come out into the open and said that this is the only way she can survive. So what does the Honourable Minister propose in light of this issue of that even one patient? What do you propose pertaining to this one patient in terms of a solution?
You know, when we agree to put a drug on the list, the drug has to go through a lot of trials. Clinical trial. It has to go through a lot of clinical trial. I can't decide tomorrow, I said that drug A, I feel better with it, the government have to legalize it. We can't do that. Because, I mean, that's how a drug is put on the market. You have different trials before you put a drug on the market. Now, if there's one case, I'm not going to say anything about that particular patient, but I have to go according to what trial has been done, and then we decide if the trial is working across the board, in a lot, treating most of the people, they are getting the result, naturally we'll consider it. But I can't go on one anecdotal evidence, and then I prescribe it. No. That's medicine. Clinical trial is like that. Clinical trial in medicine, you don't go according to one clinical evidence. You go according to a large trial, and then you see if it works, then you recommend it. If it doesn't work, you don't recommend it.
Last question from the leader of opposition.
Speaker, 47 countries have authorized medical cannabis for use. The minister appears to put a lot of faith in the Food and Drug Administration of the USA. He has said that at least 20 times during this half an hour. I'm going to ask the minister, whether he will not authorize drugs approved by the FDA for use in the USA and therefore around the world, such as Epidiolex here in Mauritius, to treat even if it were 1, 10 or 100 or 1,000 epileptic children in Mauritius. This is a straightforward question. You have quoted FDA 20 times. FDA has approved. Are you here going to amend the law?
Mr. Speaker, so I didn't talk about the FDA. You talk about the FDA first. No, you mention FDA first, not ha, like that. No, don't give that kind of... As far as the patient is concerned, again, it's not for me to prescribe. Not because I'm a doctor, I have to prescribe the drug tomorrow. There's a committee, there's a therapeutic committee. If the therapeutic committee come tomorrow, when they decide the therapeutic committee, I would abide by their decision. It's not because I'm a pediatrician or I'm a doctor, I have to prescribe the drug myself. So it depends on the therapeutic committee.
Time is over.